Welcome back. It is time for a test. Miss Wager's a test. Yes, but you are totally prepared for this, so have no fears. This is going to be awesome. So, with your selection test, let's first talk about our learning intention. So, this is going to be covering everything that we've been learning up to this point. So, we're learning to demonstrate our understanding of a text on an assessment. Okay? We know we are successful when we can summarize a text, describe the characters, understand the sequence of events, and understand point of view. These are all things that we have been working on so far when we have been reading Porpoises and Peril. And I'm even going to give you some examples of some of those things that we've been working on with from Porpoises and Peril in our lesson. So, for sequence of events, you had this question as a reading response. Which events in this part of the story happen at the same time? Cite specific details that let you know. So you had read through these two paragraphs and you looked to see what events were happening at the same time. So let's look back at this and check. Well, that was interesting, said Jada as they walked up the beach. Cam nodded in agreement. Let's get a snack and wait for the others to get back, he suggested. They headed to a nearby crab shack and sat down at a table. Jada started snapping pictures of the view as they waited for their food to arrive. Okay, in our second section. Meanwhile, the rented outboard motorboat rocked in the current as Kate put on her diving gear and pulled a camera and some sample bottles out of her backpack. Then she attached the underwater camera and the water sample bottle to her diving belt, checked their location on her tablet, and compared it to the barge's location. They were on target. Okay, I'm ready, she told Reggie. Good luck and be careful. I'll be here when you come up. So when I was looking at these, remember that we can see that these events are happening at the same time. So in the second part, when Kate is getting ready to dive into the water, that's happening at the same time that Jada and Cam are going to get a snack at the crab shack. Those things are happening simultaneously. That means at the same time because they're in different parts right now. Because remember, the group, they had split up to go do different things at the same time. So that's one thing with sequence of events, being able to remember what is happening and when. Next was point of view. So this question was asked of you. From whose viewpoint do we learn about the barge? What does he believe about the barge? Underline your evidence in the text. So again, let's review this. I'm going to read this and then I'm going to give you a minute to stop and think about it. Wait, one more thing, Dr. Bloodman called just as the team was about to squeeze out of the tiny door. I received a communication from the Coast Guard that a barge loaded with mining equipment drifted very close to our island some weeks ago. Apparently, it lost steering power. It would have been a disaster if the barge had tipped and the oily equipment had landed in our waters. Anyway, the crew worked on the steering overnight, and by the next morning, it had vanished. So again, you stop and think. Who tells us about the barge? From whose viewpoint do we learn about this? You got it? Make sure you're like really have this in your head. Right? Who is it? Dr. Bloodman. Duh, Miss Wagers. I know. So, because Dr. Bloodman right here, he says, wait, I received this communication. It had this mining equipment. So he starts to tell the team. Okay, what does he believe about the barge? Well, let's see. He says it could have been a disaster if it had tipped over. So he believes that barge could have caused a real problem, but he's glad that it didn't. So that's point of view. Who do we learn about the barge from? Oh, Dr. Bloodman. And then one other review is character. Okay, so it says Jada takes the lead in formulating a plan for fixing the porpoise problem. What does this suggest about Jada's character? And then you used details from the text to support your answer. Now, I didn't include the text this time, but when you're describing someone in the text, you're thinking about their character. So, for the example with Jada, she's taking the lead in formulating this plan. What does that tell us about her? Hmm? Maybe she's organized. Maybe she takes initiative, like she likes to start things, right? You could have used a lot of different words to describe Jada, okay? But we're thinking about her as a person in words that describe her. So that's the character. And then lastly, a slide that I didn't include, but I know you know how to do, is if we look back at our learning intentions, you also have to be able to summarize a text. And that's something that we have been working on all throughout these lessons. So really thinking about what were the main things that happened in the story. Okay, when you're summarizing, you know that that's telling the most important parts. So let's think about some things to remember. When you are taking a test, you want to read the whole selection. There will be a passage on this test for you to read. You need to make sure you read the whole thing. I know sometimes it can be daunting and a little bit scary when you see this whole story for you to read. Okay, I promise you it's not that bad and you will get through it. Take your time and read the whole story. The second thing, use the strategies that you have been learning while reading the selection. Okay? So be using all the strategies and thinking about the characters, the setting, the points of view, sequence, and even coming to words that you don't know. Be thinking about these strategies and actively trying to use the strategies. That's why we're teaching them to you. Number 3, read the questions and all of the answer choices. Okay, just because letter A looks like the right answer doesn't mean that you shouldn't check B, C, and D. Make sure you're checking all of the answer choices. And number 4, this is the biggest thing I tell my students, and we have been over this, Miss Lawson and I, many times. Make sure that you are looking back for text evidence. This is not a memorization test. And so we want you to look back in the story to help you answer the test. You do not have to memorize the whole story. You should read the story or parts of the story more than once. It's okay to look back. Yes, it takes longer, but it's not a race. Because number 5, the last thing to remember, take your time. Again, you've got this. You are prepared and you are going to do amazing. Just relax and do your best. All right. So I want you guys to shine on, turn those light bulbs on up in your heads, and you will be amazing. Have a great day. I'll see you later. Bye, guys.